Today is Valentine's Day, a day that has almost lost a lot of its meaning as years go by. There's not really too much left in this holiday for me. I was really planning to do a very Valentine's-centric, just entire week for the podcast and almost a La La Land full in-depth deep dive episode, but that didn't really feel right. For some reason, it didn't really feel right to dive into a romance movie for Valentine's Day. I just felt almost off and a little weird about it. I still have a La La Land episode floating around in my head, but until then, I just didn't really want to do a Valentine's Day episode. I almost felt like I would just be a sheep within the flock, almost just being a little bit too carbon copy from everyone else. People need a little bit more fun, a little bit more excitement than that for Valentine's Day, and there's nothing just so different and so beyond anyone's expectations of a true Valentine's Day podcast episode than to talk about Deadpool from 2016. As I was writing this episode, the Deadpool 3 trailer hadn't yet dropped, so it's really ironic that the Deadpool 3 trailer dropped the same exact week of this episode coming out, so I'm going to kind of try to ride the hype of that trailer. If you want to know my thoughts on the Deadpool 3 trailer, I'm not that excited for it too much. I was going to do a podcast episode just specifically saying what to expect and just what I want to see from this, but in my head, I just sound like such a negative Nancy, the no fun police, and I don't want to be the bad guy when everyone else is having their fun with these superhero films. We got a little bit of a long wait before Deadpool 3 comes out, so until then, I'm going to be diving into a lot of other Fox Universe X-Men movies to really segue into that enormous Deadpool 3 release day. And to start us off into that amazing series on all of those Fox movies, we're going to be diving into Deadpool 2016. When you think of a Valentine's Day film, Deadpool from 2016 probably doesn't come to your head, but after rewatch, this film really does hit all of the right notes and all the right beats to be a very solid Valentine's Day movie. Not the one you expect, but definitely the one that you need for your Valentine's Day. In addition to all of that, this episode will be the first in my new kind of sub-series of more mature content for adults. Growing up, I was really fascinated by the idea that was Adult Swim on Cartoon Network, and I just kind of wanted to adapt that into the podcast itself. You're going to be able to tell what episodes are going to be specifically featuring more mature content by that little blue badge in the top left corner of the artwork you can see, and also it'll be marked explicit for you. So if you're under the age of 18, then click away from this episode, and if you're not, then let's go ahead and have some fun. But if you're still under the age of 18 and you didn't listen to me, just don't tell your mom I told you to stay here. This is all on you, bud. With all that extremely egregious yap time out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into Deadpool from 2016.
I mean, I was told by my film professor, there are films and there are movies. And sometimes you've got to know what you're walking into.
Yeah. See, but I come from a time when movies were films.
As I was writing this episode, I just realized just how revolutionary Deadpool was when it first released. This movie really should have never even came out, and just seeing how much it's affected cinema as a whole and R-rated cinema, it's just so impressive seeing that this film worked when everyone ruled it out. I mean, if we go all the way back through the timeline, we have to start at X-Men Origins when Fox truly messed up Deadpool to a just egregious level. If you've seen X-Men Origins, then you definitely know what I'm talking about. If you don't, just know they just really didn't do anything right whatsoever in terms of just comic book accuracy, nothing at all. The only thing that was good was that Ryan Reynolds played him back in Origins, and also he had those two katanas. That's just about it. Besides that, this character was just absolutely ruined, and they tried to tease him at the very end of X-Men Origins, but there was gladly no spinoff of that alternate version of Deadpool because it would have just been absolutely awful. So Fox already messed up Deadpool in X-Men Origins to just a egregious level. I feel like he wasn't as popular back then, so it wasn't as big as, let's say, Sony ruining Spider-Man in like early 2000s. But, you know, still, people really cared about this character and they just didn't do it right at all. And Ryan Reynolds was so perfect for the part that they just kind of wasted him back then. Luckily for us, it was Ryan Reynolds who was playing Deadpool, not any other actor in the world. If it was, let's say, Chris Evans or Ryan Gosling who was playing Deadpool, either one of those actors or any actor living would have given up on this character and on this role and just ruled it off from their acting career as a whole. And Ryan Reynolds had just every right to do so. I mean, what they did to that character was absolutely egregious, but Ryan Reynolds knew what this character can be and what it meant to so many different people, and he just understood that it was important to get this film right, and people would come for it if they just did it right. So shortly after the terrible Deadpool adaptation we got the first time around, a true Deadpool script was written starring Ryan Reynolds as the lead role, and they showed it over to 20th Century Fox. Fox saw it, they thought it was pretty cool, but they just weren't really truly convinced yet. Fox let them make a little bit of a test footage to show them this film really can work and it's actually going to be really cool if you let us do it. Fox saw that little bit of a test footage that they made and they just didn't have faith in this project whatsoever. So after Fox denied that true Deadpool adaptation purely out of just no faith for the project in any way, the test footage was leaked online by someone from the main cast. We don't know who that someone is who inevitably made this film get greenlit, but most likely it was Ryan Reynolds at the end of the day. Ryan Reynolds is always alluding to the fact that it was him who ended up releasing the footage, and it really makes the most sense and offers the coolest story, so I'm gonna roll with it. But after that little test footage was released in all of its almost beautiful glory, it was in like 480p and shot on an iPod, but still it was really cool. The internet loved it. I loved it after I saw it online on a random Saturday afternoon, and the movie ended up getting greenlit. I have that in quotes, and I say greenlit in quotes because this movie was greenlit for $58 million and only a 48-day shooting schedule. That's kind of small on both sides of the spectrum. It's understandable why this script is really small and really contained, but I don't think that Fox had faith in this movie to put all their cards on the table towards a Deadpool movie. It's understandable why the state of the comic book genre just didn't really allow for too much R-rated comic book films, and very understandably, but looking at a film like Logan, I understand that Logan is everything, an absolute masterpiece neo-western movie. Logan had a $97 million budget with a 106-day shooting schedule. Once again, two completely different films. Logan is a much broader character story, and Deadpool a lot smaller in its script, so it's understandable why, but still, they clearly gave a lot to Logan, and Deadpool just kind of got a little bit of cash to make the movie. It's a little bit upsetting because this film is really good and really would have benefited from having a bigger budget, but when you look at the current state of R-rated comic book films at the time, it's understandable why. The only R-rated films at the time when Deadpool came out was really only Kick-Ass 1 and 2 and Watchmen from the early 2000s. It was really only those three. I know there was probably a couple more sprinkled in there, but those were the two biggest ones, and neither of them really got the financial or critic success that the studios would have wanted. The Kick-Ass films I just personally love, and they will always have a place in my heart, and the Watchmen movie, I don't really understand Watchmen that much because the story is just so broad, but it is, in my opinion, a pretty solid adaptation from Zack Snyder, but it wasn't really big. It wasn't really the MCU level of big in terms of financial success or critic success, so studios just would never really gravitate towards an R-rated comic book film because it felt so foreign at the time. As for how I felt about Deadpool prior to its release, I wasn't really too sure with what to expect from a Deadpool movie. I understand what Deadpool was supposed to be just from some early TV shows and just random movies growing up. But, as for just what this true Deadpool movie would be for the, cinema as a whole, I wasn't really too sure. And you gotta think, at the time, this is 2016 Marvel. This is them just at their absolute peak. They're starting to release banger for banger. X-Men films aren't terrible as of this point. They had First Class at this time and, Days of Future Past, so a lot of just really solid banger movies. But just as for an R-rated comic book film really of this magnitude, I wasn't sure of how it would just positively or negatively affect the MCU, and if Deadpool would be a part of the MCU, wasn't that sure. But I knew this movie would just overall be good for cinema and just good for the comic book genre to really just spread its wings and just branch out into other kinds of cinema. Saying this film was just an absolute smash hit would be a just massive understatement because people truly did love this movie. It released February 12, 2016. It really took advantage of that just closeness with its Valentine's Day release day, and everyone and their mom feel like saw this movie on Valentine's Day. Deadpool was able to gross $782 million worldwide against a budget of $58 million, making it just an absolute smash success. It also has a very respectful 85% critic score and 90% audience score over on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 3.7 average on Letterboxd. I never really expected this film to be exactly bad, but I don't think anyone really expected it to be this good or this successful when it first came out. Not even Fox or not even Ryan Reynolds to an extent, because this movie just really did shape so many different films we see today, and I will just be forever grateful for that reason.
Oh, motherfucker, you are hard to look at.
Like a testicle with teeth.
You look like Freddy Krueger face fucked a topographical map of Utah. You are haunting. You look like an avocado had sex with an older avocado.
Thank you.
I really forgot just how good and just how much I absolutely adore this Deadpool film. It does everything that I wanted to do, and it really shows me this is like top 15 Marvel movies of all time. It's just so solid on rewatch, and what it's done and what it's doing here is just so revolutionary. I'll never get enough of it. All that being said, it is a great movie, but this Deadpool film feels very safe and very contained. I understand that a Deadpool movie doesn't really need to do too much in terms of its story. It's very contained, it's very safe, it feels very Deadpool just in the story that it's telling. But I just can't help but noticing every time I watch the movie, it feels like a Deadpool film to prove to Fox that it can work. It's very just strategic in every single line of dialogue. Hey Fox, this is what Deadpool's supposed to be, let us make the movie. That feels like the entire runtime of the movie. Not really a negative, just something that I just noticed upon rewatch. It's very safe while also just being fun, filled with just nudity and sex and blood and gore throughout the entire runtime, which is just everything Deadpool. The best aspect of this film, in my opinion, is just the comedy and just the delivery and timing of every single joke will always land and just always hit on just so many different levels. You'd think at some point I'd be tired of all of the fourth wall breaks and campiness of this movie, but you're talking to the same guy who logged DreamWorks over the hedge like 8 times last year, so I'm just here for all of the comedy, all of this Ryan Reynolds just at his absolute peak of his acting career in this movie, just delivering some of the best he's ever done, and I just truly appreciate everything that he's done for this movie, but mainly the comedy, because it wouldn't be here without him. In addition to the just incredibly masterful comedic delivery throughout the entire runtime of this movie, you really just, I feel like, haven't experienced this film unless you were a middle school boy growing up and this movie just happened to come out. If you saw this movie, you were just immediately one of the coolest kids in school. If your parents let you watch R-rated movies and brought you to the Deadpool showing, you were immediately like one of the most popular kids in the school because everyone wanted to see it. It was like our Roman Empire for a solid few months just because of how fun and how cool it was. Just the idea we shouldn't be watching this movie, that's exactly why we're going to be watching it. How did I watch this movie? I really don't know. I didn't see it in theaters. It was probably because of cable. FX, Fox, TNT, all of them probably played this movie on repeat. God bless America, God bless movies, and God bless cable for supplying me with this movie as I was growing up because I absolutely loved it, but never saw it in theaters. Absolute pain. Also, as a fan, I really appreciate them addressing the mess that is the Fox X-Men universe, and also Ryan Reynolds' just terrible failed acting career. In a lot of their jokes, they just bring up both of these things many, many times. Number one, the Fox X-Men universe has supplied me with just a lot of beautiful memories and beautiful characters, the biggest one being Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine. Can't wait to see him in Deadpool 3. Will it ruin the character? Hopefully not, but what Hugh Jackman did to that character is just truly breathtaking. Really just a top 3 greatest castings in cinematic history is Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and I'll never get enough of it or just ever be upset with what they've done with that character because it's just so beautiful in a lot of the movies, even the bad ones. Now that being said, I'll give Fox their flowers for a quick moment. I'll take them right back away. Fox really did mess up a lot of these X-Men movies and never really had a clear set plan for a lot of them. They tried at one point, Days of Future Past, really cool, First Class, really cool, and some other just really cool ones, but they never really just hit the ground running with a lot of these movies. They could have been really good. The, X-Men IP and the Fantastic Four is something that should really be really above the MCU. Those are the coolest characters in Marvel, and somehow they fumbled them. So it's really just refreshing to see them address, hey, we know we messed up X-Men. That's why we're going to sell to Disney in a couple years. And, we're going to bring all these X-Men characters into the MCU. Kevin Feige is going to save everything. That'll happen eventually. But, they understood that in this movie. And also Ryan Reynolds, I really do love him. He's, for me, a childhood defining actor as I'm just realizing this and writing this and talking about it more. Ryan Reynolds has really impacted my childhood in a positive way. But, he really doesn't have a lot of good movies. Just looking at his filmography, he has some bangers in there, but nothing, he doesn't have like a Oscar-worthy movie in here. Not saying that makes him a bad actor, but he has had some questionable choices like, Blade Trinity and also Green Lantern and X-Men Origins. Some of those worked out positively. Like in this movie, they are able to make a lot of fun jokes out of him. But, he's never really had that. But I appreciate them making fun of him never really having an incredible acting career. But, he's still fun, which I enjoy. And lastly, the biggest thing that I love about this movie is just its story. Every movie is about something at the end of the day, whether it's Over the Hedge, whether it's Lawrence of Arabia or a Scorsese film or Deadpool. Every movie is about something, and that something is what carries it along to its finished runtime. And this movie is no different. I know that Deadpool isn't really like a Superman or a Batman or Spider-Man, where he's really a character-driven story and a character-driven narrative, but still, it shows here that it still can work with a Deadpool movie, just exploring this character internally, trying to figure himself out. It is a romance movie, and a lot of romance films can be really just not too great at all and just not really understanding of what love can be. But I think Deadpool, as weird as it may sound, is just one of the best interpretations of what romance can be and what it should be on the big screen. Every romance film is different in its own right. You have your La La Land, and then you have your Past Lives, and then you also have your The Notebook, and then you have If Beale Street Can Talk. Every romance movie is different in its own right, which is what makes a lot of them so good, because none of them is exactly like the other. And Deadpool is really cool just because of its just emotional maturity and how for a lot of this movie, we're just stuck inside of Wade's head of trying to figure it out and trying to just be better for his love interest in the movie. And it really caught me with what this movie is about when Wade first finds out that he has cancer, and he immediately starts thinking about memorizing her face as if it's the first time he ever saw her, or potentially the last time, immediately thinking about the end, and immediately, more importantly, thinking about her and what she needs and what she deserves in a relationship. This movie does have a quote-unquote villain, I'll say, but it's never really about him. Majority of this film is just internally Wade Wilson trying to battle his scars, and with his scars comes Deadpool, and with Deadpool, he uses that to inflict his pain on others to be enough for the woman that he loves. That's really the drive of this film, and that really makes Wade Wilson almost the true antagonist of this story, just because the villain doesn't really do anything exactly bad. It's mostly Wade who brings forth all this conflict in the movie. Not exactly his fault because he has cancer, but just because of what he chooses to do as he undergoes this pain throughout the film. I feel like we never really dive into as much as the themes as we need to. The movie kind of just has its pace that it just slowly goes upon with just a little bit of comedy along the way, which is fine, but I think that we really could be just diving into a Batman Begins-esque Deadpool film, which is what I'm really here for at the end of the day. But with these themes of love that we do get at the end of the film, we know that love has no bounds and it transcends everything. That is, after a few drinks, for just Deadpool's just very gruesome looking face. I can't blame her at all, but, it is what it is.
See? You don't need to be a superhero to get the girl. The right girl will bring out the hero in you. Now, let's finish this epic wide shot. Pull out. There we go. That looks nice. It's going to be about the only thing that's pulling out tonight. Who doesn't love a happy ending, huh? Until next time, this is your friendly neighborhood pool guy singing, I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you.
With our feature presentation out of the way, it's time to go into my superlatives for Deadpool, and this is the most fun I'll have the entire episode. I get to dive into what I truly believe are just the best moments and best aspects of this entire movie in the funnest way possible. So kicking us off, what's the best scene in this movie? What is our scene stealer for Deadpool? And for me, it came down to two choices, and it was a really just tough debate for me. I was staying up at night, tossing and turning, what's the best scene in this movie? And for a while, I thought it was the scene of him meeting Colossus. I mean, that scene is just hilarious, and it's a very close second, because nothing comes close to the counting bullet scene in this movie. I don't know why I just never considered that for the longest time. This is just truly the best sequence in this entire film. It's also the scene that they first did for that test footage, and that's the one that leaked online, and seeing it just come to life in its full glory is what truly makes this scene so perfect.
Wait! You may be wondering why the red suit. Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed. This guy's got the right idea. He wore the brown pants. Fine! I only have 12 bullets, so you're gonna have to share. Let's count them down. Oh, I'm touching myself tonight.
So let's give a big round of applause for the Counting Bullets scene for being the first ever winner of the Scene Stealer Award in Court of Cinema history. Big congrats to that one. It's really, truly deserved. Now, that's the best scene in the movie, but what's the best quote in the movie? For my favorite joke of this entire movie, it's really hard having to decide just one joke being the best quote of the entire movie. Over 100 different references and just Easter eggs in this entire film. Having to pick just one is so much harder than you believe, but there was only one joke that I truly thought was the absolute best and really just the most underrated throughout the entire movie. The joke that I'm referencing is when Deadpool makes the joke about Swedish IKEA furniture. It's just absolutely just out of the ordinary and just out of place in this movie, which is what makes it so good. Deadpool says, "We're going with the Ordvars, not the Borgia. Get it through your head or get out of here." I know I don't really speak Swedish, but it's just so funny for some reason. IKEA would only allow Deadpool writers to use this joke if it was truly authentic, and there's nothing more authentic than telling him, "We're going with the Ordvars, not the Borgia. What are you doing? That's the furniture we're going with." It's truly authentic, which is what makes it so good. IKEA, thank you for this joke. I already ordered like 5 sets of Borgia furniture placements for my house, and I can't wait for those to come in.
I was going to spend the night assembling the Borgia, but this is holding my interest.
I told you we're going with the Ordvash, not the Bjorsha. Get it through your head or get out of fucktown.
Shit.
Now, for one small change that I'd make for this movie, if I could add anything at all to this film, it wouldn't be any characters from the MCU. I mean, Spider-Man would be really, really cool, but I would just add chimichangas to this movie. It feels so out of place to not have chimichangas in this film. It feels just so noticeable that something's missing. I'm yearning for just one tiny aspect, and it's chimichangas. I've never just touched a single Deadpool comic book in my entire life, but one thing I know is that he just absolutely loves chimichangas, so not having a single chimichanga on frame in the entire movie, it's a little bit upsetting. I'm praying Deadpool 3, there's some kind of chimichangas inserted in the film. It would make my year, my day, my entire month if they just did that one small thing for me. For double features for this movie, what would I give to you for double features? There's 3 options. I couldn't pick between any one of these 3, so for double features for this movie, I have one. You could go with X-Men Origins and then Deadpool for obvious reasons. You can see just how badly they messed up Deadpool the first time around, and then watch something a little bit more fun. But if you don't want to go with X-Men Origins into Deadpool, you can go with Green Lantern into Deadpool. That's a fun one, really fun one. I really don't like just how they really haven't taken advantage of Green Lantern in the DC at all. Gladly, they're going to be changing that with James Gunn coming in, but, you know, watch Green Lantern, then watch Deadpool. You can see how Ryan Reynolds just tried to shift into DC a little bit, realized it was just not hidden whatsoever, then he just shifted back into Marvel, and it's just beautiful. And for the final double feature recommendation I have for you, I have Love Actually and then Deadpool. Love Actually isn't Ryan Reynolds' best film or even the best romance movie of all time, but that's just a really fun, in my opinion, double feature, and it was just engraved into my brain to mention Love Actually going into Deadpool. I think I was brainwashed by Fox or something, but, you know, Love Actually, kind of a fun film. Check it out. If this film was a song, what would it be? It's so hard to pick between one song for this movie, but then I realized if there's just one song that this film identifies as, it's Careless Whisper. There's just no secret. It's in the end of the film. Ryan Reynolds clearly has a deep affection for Wham. I don't know who doesn't love Wham at all, but, you know, if this movie was a song, it would be Careless Whisper. A close second is X Gonna Give It To You by DMX. Rest in peace, the GOAT. All right, now we got a couple more things to dive into before I send you on your way. One of those things is Buzz from the Backlot. What is Buzz from the Backlot? Let's say you're at a dinner party or like a family event or maybe even therapy. Maybe you're meeting the in-laws and you just really had to show off your just extensive film knowledge. That's what people love about you the most. Not your looks or your personality, that extensive film knowledge. And that's exactly what Buzz from the Backlot is going to do for you. Starting us off with Buzz from the Backlot, in an interview with one of the writers of this film, it was stated that Negasonic Teenage Warhead wasn't always supposed to be in this film. Other X-Men such as Cannonball were considered for Deadpool, but eventually Negasonic Teenage Warhead was chosen for this film only because they thought the name was cool. And it is a really cool name. I can't blame him on that one. It's clearly better than a name like Cannonball. Who is Cannonball? No one cares. The Deadpool costume originally had a muscle layer underneath, but it eventually had to be removed because Ryan Reynolds was just so muscular that the costume was too tight for him and made him look just over large in this movie. I feel like Ryan Reynolds just hacked my computer just to type that in here because it feels like more of a flex than an actual fun fact, but moving on. Ryan Reynolds' full body makeup took 8 hours to apply. Once it was on, he wasn't able to sit down or lie down. Well, that's our buzz from the back lot, kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here with this week's selection, but I'll dive into cooler ones with more movies that we review. And finally, the biggest award of the entire night, who is the MVP of Deadpool? There's really only one person. I've said his name about 1,000 times. It's going to be engraved in my head as I go to sleep tonight. The MVP of this movie is clearly and obviously Ryan Reynolds. I don't think that I see a Deadpool movie even happening without Ryan Reynolds, not only because on screen he's just absolutely perfect and he really brings this character to life and to a new level. There is really no Deadpool without Ryan Reynolds. Whenever I look at a comic book or whenever I watch a show or a movie with Deadpool inside of it, I'm always going to have Deadpool in the back of my head and hearing Ryan Reynolds as that Deadpool. But I think that the biggest reason why Ryan Reynolds is just the MVP of this film is the fact that he never gave up on this character and on this story. He knew it could work. He knew that this is something that had to be told to the world. There's so many different films that we see out today, like Joker, like Logan, even though Logan was in development probably when this movie was in development as well, so probably didn't have as big of an effect on Logan, but just other R-rated comic book films and just other raunchy and R-rated comic book stuff we see out today. I don't think there's a reality where that happens without this film working and actually being successful. I mean, there's other actors who say they love the character so much and they just really want to portray this character, but in reality, they're just there for the paycheck. Ryan Reynolds has just put over a decade into this role and into this film that it wouldn't be a reality without him whatsoever. Just as an example, the writers of this movie weren't paid to be on set by Fox. Ryan Reynolds paid them out of his own pocket to be on set. The scriptwriters clearly, obviously, have a very important role of being on set to oversee a film as it's being shot. So the studio just didn't think that whatsoever. Ryan Reynolds understood that, took the money out of his own pocket and gave it to them, as well as a plethora of other things. He is the GOAT of this movie. He is the MVP, and that won't change in a very long time. My final score for this film is a B+, a very solid B+. I really love this movie. I want to watch it again already. I can never get enough of this character or this world. I also never really realized how nostalgic it was for me. This movie coming out when I was a lot younger and seeing it again when I'm older just has a different level of freshness to it as I watch it. My big question as I leave you today, is this the best comic book portrayal ever that we've ever seen? In my opinion, no, I don't think this is the best portrayal or casting ever. I think that, Robert Downey Jr. is just really important for cinema as a whole if that role doesn't work. So my pick is RDJ, but Deadpool is in that top 10 discussion, if not top 5. But besides that, that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Court of Cinema podcast. I hope you just have a fantastic Valentine's Day, whether you have a date, whether you're alone, have just the most fun in the world. Follow us on all of our socials, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Follow me on Letterboxd. If you want a true romance ranking, I have ranked 55 romance films on my Letterboxd. Go and check that out if you want a true romance film. But until then, Deadpool is probably your number one option for today. Stick around for later this week. I have a review for the Ted TV series on Peacock coming out, and that TV show is, in my opinion, the best TV show of the entire month, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Until I talk to you guys again, stay swagged out, stay cool, watch more movies, and I'm your host, Logan, and I'll see you in the movies.